Okay, now that we've got the spars in top and bottom, we should have a pretty solid wing going on right now. That looks pretty good, and it should be light. So next thing we're going to do, working on the top of the wing, remember there's a top and a bottom. These shucks just kind of helps hold it in place. Now that we've got all the spars locked in, we've got the, and one thing I mentioned is when you're putting all this together, the spars, make sure that these wings are flush into the shells. That's what keeps it straight without any twist in the wing. So now servo replacement. In this one here, we're going to be using some Emax ES08 metal gear digital servos. And where we're going to place them at, now with servos and the angle here, obviously the ideal place to put servo linkage is perpendicular to the hinge line. In order to do that, you literally have to probably put that servo out past the spar, which this spar just happens to be on the rearward portion of the CG. So if you were to put it out here, we'd be putting both these servos behind the CG. You're welcome to try it. Tends to make things a little bit tail heavy. So we kind of do a little bit of a trade-off here. We're going to move this servo, and we've kind of drawn out both these already. Go out here just above our spar right here. And we've gone out and we've measured a tick mark right about 4 inches out. So these are spaced evenly. And we've measured in here, because this is where our elevon is going to be 1 inch, because this is going to come out and kind of be tapered. You got to have room for that control horn. And we put a mark right here. And here we just simply kind of located the servo in there, run up a triangle. So we're kind of square with that line right there. So we're going to have a rod that's going to go just at a little bit of an angle. It'll move the control surface. That's why I prefer ball links, because ball links tend to roll around a little bit smoother. So anyway, once we get this set in there, okay, and depending on your servo, you may have to adjust it a little bit. To cut the servo out, we're going to simply take, now that we've got it marked, and we drew the outline of the servo, make sure to put your the horn on there, so you mark out enough room so you got movement for the horn and everything. Taking your sharp knife, and I've already done it on this one here, so we'll do this one here. And we're going to score the lines in. And what that does is it's going to give an outline of where the foam's going to come out. Now you got a couple of methods here of removing this, and I've already done this side over here. Once we get this cut, again I've already cut this side out over here. We can peel this away. Now you got a couple different ways you can remove this foam. The way I'm going to do it is use a Dremel tool with a small burr bit on it, because we can set the depth of the servo to that burr bit and route it out and put it in there flush. Also on the servos, you can notice I've trimmed away the tabs, because obviously you don't need one of these right here. Saves a little bit of space there. The other option is if you don't have a Dremel tool, it's not that difficult, just to set the depth of the cut on your blade and just make a number of lines, a bunch of lines. Sharp knife, obviously, back and forth, try to get the depth. Maybe do it a little bit shallow, pull the first ones out. Then you can literally pull the beads out one by one, and as long as you do a good cut, you'll have to do this cut depth on the edges here, as deep as your servo. It'll pull out the foam, and I'll go along the outline there. But since we've got a Dremel tool here, this works a little bit better. We're going to use it, and since we've already got our lines cut there, the bit will follow the cutout. We've got every set drawn out and set correctly. Then the servo we want it to sit flush with the top because it's going to become part of the top of the wing. We're going to put a piece of covering over it, and that way there's no indentation. So we got that one. Like I said, it's in about perfect. Okay, I've gone ahead and I have routed in all the pockets for all the electronics where I want them to go. It's a good time to do this now because once you put the firewall on and the fairings for the firewall, it's hard to get the Dremel tool in there to route it flush. Plus it gives you time to lay it out where you want it. In this case we're using a Mach 2 VTX because I like the solder tabs rather than having plugs. I like to direct solder everything. In fact, we're using a Bear XSR without the pins on it. I've used in some of my other ones, the D4Rs, and just taken my time and cut them and depinned it. We're using an Emax 45 amp quad ESC this time instead of a airplane ESC, try to save some weight. This is a 5-volt regulator, which we'll have to run wires. We'll have to run the power to the regulator to the receiver because it needs 5 volts, and of course that powers the servos as well. I think it has like a 3 amp output, which should be enough. So next we're going to do the elevons. And on the elevons I've got one cut. There is a up and down. If you look at the elevon, it's got a so you just want to make sure to orientate it right, okay, on the deal. So the easiest way to do this is you want to cut the tip part first. And the easiest way to do this is just run it in there. Make sure it looks kind of square there. Take you a pencil and then mark that. And then go cut that. Oops, pencil mark didn't work too well. Now, in my case, I happen to have a bandsaw and a disc sander, so I went out and did that with my bandsaw disc sander. I cut this end in. And then on this other end, once you get that where it's just nice and nice and square with your line or flush with your line right there, what you want to do is just take a piece of tape, works pretty good. You want to put this elevon on there, and we want to slide the tip over, leave about a 1/16 of an inch gap. Works really good over there. And we'll just tape it up there so we keep it flush. And then, very carefully, draw you a line on the inner. Because if you do the outer first, if you make a little bit of mistakes, it gives you an opportunity to shape it and get it nice and square with the line right there. This one's easy because once you get done that, just put a little tape on there that holds it up flush with the surface of the wing, and then draw this one out, and then go out and cut this one out. And again, I just cut it, little disc sander, square it up. So when this thing is in there, it should be in line right there with about a 1/16 of an inch gap over there, so you don't run into any binding problems. Okay, on the elevons, there's one last thing I forgot to mention that we're going to need to do. I haven't done it on this one yet. Is these elevons are about 1.5 inches wide, and we got to trim them down to match the wing, which the wing cutout's 1 1/4, plus or minus whatever your deal is. This is not hard. We're just going to put this up flush. We're going to mark right here where we need to cut. Take a straight edge. That's about right. And very simply cut it off, trim it up. There we go. And that should fit just in there, just about perfect. Got a little hangover right there, a little bit of sandpaper if you need to, but this looks like it just about dead on. Now it's time to install the battery bottom floor. You work on the bottom, obviously. Going to cut out the cutout a 1/4 inch wider than the battery bay. So it should come out, in this case, the battery I'm using, 3.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. It gives me a 1/4 inch all the way around. And I've cut my plywood, 16-inch plywood floor to that size. And I've already gone ahead using my Dremel tool, and I routed this out. What's important is make sure the front part gets down in there. Okay, so now we're just going to glue it in with CA. And the best way to do this is going to be to take your thick CA and put a good bit of glue all the way around it. Nice thick bead. See how make sure you get it on the sides. Once we've done that, we'll just take our floor here, take some kicker, make this process go in there, put it in there, put it down, and then press it in there firmly, making sure to punch these front little corners down all the way. Give it a minute for that CA to kick off. Just a little bit of squeeze out right there. Hit that with kicker. That'll harden it. There we go. Once that in. Now we're going to, on the finishing stage, we're going to be using 3M77, and we're going to cover that with some drywall, some fiberglass drywall tape to reinforce that area there, give it something for the laminate to stick to, and also we're going to let drywall tape up underneath there, give us some support up there as well. Okay, all these spar slots that we put in there have got just a little small gap. Shouldn't be much if you got them installed in there correctly. So the way we're going to seal that up is we're going to use, in my case I'm using Gorilla Clear Grip, but this is the same as Goop, so Goop works just fine. And all we're going to do is just run a bead, glue in each one of the spar slots. Do these one at a time because this stuff starts setting up pretty thick, and once it sets up it doesn't squeegee in too well, it just gets kind of sticky. Okay, once you do a spar slot, then all you got to do is take a credit card or plastic or whatever, and then just kind of go over and then lightly just hit the spar slot. There we go. And what that does, that leaves a nice bead right there on top. That fills in that slot. Also helps kind of strengthen the spar on the top. Now, I'm going to do the rest of the bottom. I'm also going to put a little bit around here and let that dry. And then we're going to flip it over and do the top.